Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast with your host, Tracy Hayes. Today, we will change some things up. Most shows I have a top real estate agent on the show, but today I have a gentleman who helps make those agents look good. There are many support vendors in the real estate industry, those side services many don't talk about, but are active on nearly every transaction. Home inspectors, stagers, appraisers, title companies, and oh yes, that vendor who makes every home look like $1 million, the photographer. Today, I have one of the most sought after home photographers in Northeast Florida. He offers everything an agent would need to make their listing look fabulous. He is not only the president of the Listing Edge, he is also a dedicated youth baseball coach. Let's welcome Rick Farmer to the show.
Wow. I feel special.
I did some research on you. I did. Now, did I see something in there? You had a recent picture. Did your son, valedictorian? Who was that?
Yeah, that was our older son. Well, he's in his second year of college now, but yeah, he was valedictorian. Yes, I'm a proud dad. I can't help myself.
Right.
He graduated from River City Science Academy, so more technical school, and now he is an aerospace engineering major at Embry-Riddle.
Oh, awesome.
Has a 4-hour average down there too. So
excellent. Does he come home on the weekends, or he likes to?
No, usually he's building rockets. He's in the rocket club down there, and they're very active, and they literally are designing, building, launching rockets. So he's doing that. He's home for the summer, but yeah, we don't get to see him much during the year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I imagine some of the sights of Daytona Beach for a young man can keep you grounded down there as well.
Except he doesn't go out. He's a total geek boy, and that's okay because it's going to make him a lot of money in the long
run. Tell us, if I remember, I can't remember if it was LinkedIn or your Facebook. You're very involved in, is it the Atlantic Beach? The youth baseball.
I was, yeah. Now the kids are a little too old to be playing, and honestly, I would love to be coaching, but nowadays people look at you funny if you don't have kids and you're coaching.
Yeah.
I used to do that when I was younger before we had kids.
Yeah.
And I miss it because I really enjoyed it. I coached a lot of baseball, a lot of basketball, did some wrestling up in New Jersey because I used to do jiu-jitsu and trained with a lot of wrestlers. And then I was a strength and conditioning coach for one of the rec teams up there.
So yeah, the middle-aged guy with no kids participating anymore. Yeah, I can see that.
It's a little weird, right? It's a little weird,
see that. But baseball is your passion.
I love baseball.
Awesome. So Rick, tell us a little bit, because I could not even find this on your LinkedIn. Where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from New Jersey. I was born in Trenton, New Jersey. I've moved around a lot in my life. So I've lived different places in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut when I was in the Navy, San Diego when I was in the Navy, North Carolina, Florida. And I think that's it. And eventually I want to live out west in the mountains somewhere.
Is that where you want to? I was just out in Tahoe last month for the convention.
My favorite. That's where I'd love to live.
Yeah, that's that's a place there. I don't know if I would live there year round. I definitely would spend some time there. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, I would love it. I've been there all different times of the year. We actually planned on moving there before we wound up in Jacksonville, but there's just no real work there. It's all tourist, because it's a vacation area.
Yeah. There's no real industry going on.
Yeah.
Reno's not that far away, but I don't even know some light industrial stuff around Reno.
Yeah, that in Carson City, you get some stuff, but it's really not much because we really were looking at it seriously because it's just our favorite place. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, and if you know me, you know I travel a lot.
Yeah. So now, did you graduate in high school from New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay, so you're graduating from high school. What are some of the things you envisioned? Were you already was photography a hobby at this point?
No, that's the funny thing is, I actually took a photography course in middle school, and that was back in the film days. And I did real well in the course, but I didn't really catch the bug. And then, like everybody, you taking pictures and just having fun, and then cell phones you could take pictures at eventually. And then a friend of mine at the time, he got into it really heavy, and I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. And it kind of became a hobby, and I was doing just normal traditional photography. And then because I was training and competing in jiu-jitsu, and I was an amateur judge, so I judged fights in Atlantic City and
Wow.
Connecticut and stuff. So I got to know all the different promoters, and I was like, well, hey, I can take pictures of this. And so that's where my first paying gigs were, photographing mixed martial arts. So a lot of guys that have been champions in the UFC and stuff, I've photographed them. I'd love to say
Wow,
I
that's
made
interesting.
I'd love to say I
Wow.
made a lot of money, but there's really no money in it, which is why I don't do it full time, because that's what I love doing more than anything as
Right.
far as photography is sports. But there's just, especially now,
Right.
it's all freelance people and they just don't hire any.
The amount of time that you have to, you go to a ball field and they sit there and take thousands of pictures, and hopefully one makes the page, right?
Yeah.
And that's the one they get paid for.
Well, ironically, you don't even really get paid much for that. I've been in magazines and stuff, and they pay everybody but the photographer. So in the beginning, everybody when they first starts like, oh, it's amazing, I was in whatever magazine. And now that I'm older, I'm like, well, that ain't paying my bills.
Yeah.
Like you can't have the photo if you don't pay for it.
You're a starving artist.
I got kids. I got college I'm paying for.
So when you this transit, is this something when you're graduating, you're 18, 19 years old, you're involved in these in the sports pretty much right away at that time? Or and then what was your overall vision of what you wanted to do for a career?
Well,
or were you trying to find a career in the sports area there?
Well, I actually, like a lot of little boys, I wanted to be a professional baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
And, look, I was all-star, whatever that means nowadays. Like I thought I was the man back then. I don't know if I was or not, but, I did want to do that, but, kind of also realized at the time that the odds are probably not that good that I was going to make that. So I also at the time, I'm a geek and I liked science, and I wanted to, believe it or not, I wanted to do astrophysics.
Mm-hmm.
And, my family didn't have any money and I didn't know anything about,
Is that where your son kind of picked up this whole?
Well, yeah, my kids are definitely geeks, so I would imagine they got some of that from me. And then my father was an engineer. My wife's father, he was an engineer and decided he didn't like it, so he went to school to become a dentist, and he's about to retire from that any year now. So it's definitely in the genes, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a course in high school where it was a volunteer internship program, and I went to work with a professor at Princeton who was an astrophysicist. And one of the things he had said is like, well, if you do this, you need to understand electronics and how to build them and stuff like that. And so I figured, well, I'll go in the Navy and learn electronics, come out and go to college. And that was the plan. But like all good plans, they never work out. So
so do you go to the Navy?
Yes, I went to the Navy right out of high school. I turned 18 in boot camp.
Okay.
In fact, I turned 18 the day after they made me have two of my wisdom teeth cut out, and they knocked my jaw to joint. So I was totally miserable on my 18th birthday. So those of you that don't like me, there you go. I had a miserable day there.
Your wisdom teeth were due to come out in the middle?
No,
they weren't. You just got
they were impacted, and they were like, well, if you're out to sea, that's going to be a problem. And I'm like, okay.
And
you have no choice.
They decided to do that in the middle of
in boot camp, yes.
In the middle of base.
So they knocked my jaw to joint.
Oh my!
Because they're like really gnawing on, cutting on them. And then a couple weeks later, they were like, "Oh, you have a filling you have to get." So I go to get the filling, and I literally can't open my mouth because I still have problems with it, by the way. So they were like, "Okay, well, we're going to numb you up, and we'll see if we can get it." I'm like, "Okay." So they numb me up, and they hit a nerve. Now, if you've ever had a dentist hit a nerve, it is literally the most excruciating millionth of a second you'll have in your life, because it immediately works because it's on the nerve, but it is so painful for that millionth of a second or whatever.
Right.
And then they couldn't do it. I'm like, are you kidding?
It's amazing they decided to do it like in the middle of basic training. So, hey, first thing you do after you graduate from basic training, we're going over here and have your wisdom teeth out before you should, get sent out to the fleet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the military. What do you expect?
Hey, you got a day out of, PT, I guess.
Yeah, I would have rather done the PT. Trust me. I was miserable.
Okay, so you come out of you just serve a 4-year enlistment? Or?
No, I was supposed to do 6 years, but I tore ligaments in my ankle.
Okay.
So I only did just under 2. And because of that, now I have these lovely circulation issues. I have to wear compression stocking the rest of my life, and some other issues I have with it. So that was my parting gift from the Navy.
Nice, nice. So where do you go from there?
After that,
you didn't
so
get
I
all
had
these electronic trainings that you wanted to get.
Yeah, well, I did go through electronic schools and all that, and I was doing real well. I was valedictorian in my class too. Luke,
hey,
if you're listening,
runs in the family.
my son's Luke. So,
yeah.
But I was actually married before, so I'd gotten married while I was in the Navy, and honestly, we pushed that up because of money, because you make no money when you go enlisted, basically, and I basically doubled it. So we moved that up, and honestly, we probably would never got married had we waited. Didn't work out, and moved on. Whatever. It was a lot less messy than it could have been. So I came out of the Navy, and I was working for a small electronics firm that did fiber optic stuff, and I was literally a chip sorter, and the chips were literally, if you take a fleck of pepper, that's what they look like. So I had this microscope, and it was a 10 by 10 little matrix, plastic matrix, and I literally had to look through the microscope, pick the good chips, and put them in these matrix, 100 each. That was my first job out of the Navy. Yeah. And then I got into computers, and I was doing.
That's probably done electronically now.
Yeah, I'm sure it is now. It was. This was 1988.
Right.
So,
Right. Wow.
But then I wound up in the computer world and learned that, and I was doing computer support, network engineering, and all that, and then I wound up getting into. I worked for Canon USA, not on the photography side, actually on the copier side, as a trainer, and then that's when I got into sales, because I was a sales trainer, and I was like, hey, I'm smarter than these guys. And in sales, you're always like, well, all right, we'll take a quota. So I did, and I've been in some sort of sales ever since.
So now, are you doing some photography at this time? The other
not
hobby you have with the jiu-jitsu?
No, not.
When did you start getting involved with the jiu-jitsu?
Jiu-jitsu was probably early 90s. Okay. Early to mid 90s. So
a few years later, because you went 88 to.
And that was probably about when I started getting, early 90s, I probably started getting into photography. I didn't get serious about it until 2000-ish, 2001, somewhere around when I got married to my lovely wife, Edith.
Right. Now, you initially had, you were doing your thing was like a lot of photographers think about doing, I guess, when they envision getting out there and being self-employed, doing the weddings, doing the portraits, or that kind of stuff. What led you? How did that evolve? And then,
well, when I started to get real serious about it, I was actually in the mortgage business. I did 15 years penance in the mortage business. And
you didn't put that on you put PHH for 10 months on you got to get your LinkedIn cleaned up.
Well, I
remember you telling me that, and I'm like looking at it going, man, he only has 10 months of PHH.
Yeah, that's where I worked when I first came down here, and I hated it because it wasn't, it's not your traditional mortgage. It's a it's a call center. Yeah, and that's just not me. But I did 15 years in the mortgage business. That's around when I started getting into photography, and at some point, some realtor that I knew that I was doing business with asked me, hey, you do photography, can you shoot houses? And I'm like, sure, I can do that, because, photographers, if you're good at one thing, you can do everything, right? Well, I found out quickly that's not true. And I should go back and look at my first shoots and look at how pathetic they were compared to what we do today.
Right.
But, that was up in New Jersey at the time. And then we moved down here. I came down in October of 2010. That's when I was working for PHH. And I was like, well, I'm going to figure it out because I lived with a friend. And if it made sense, then my wife was going to get a job and bring the boys down, which is what wound up happening. And, it just, that was like the worst time to be in the mortgage business, basically.
Oh, yeah.
So it was very difficult to make any money anyway. And
I wouldn't say the worst time. 2007-8 was the worst time, but you're at least you're on an upward climb in 2010.
Well, what I mean is that moving to a new location to reestablish your business is probably the worst time. But I wound up in underwriting, so I wound up with a contract underwriting gig. So I was working from home, and it was great because I was making good money and I could work all the hours I wanted. So I was making tons of overtime, making up for all the money I'd lost.
Right.
But I also had free time because I could work whatever hours I wanted. So I would get up real early, underwrite some loans. And then that's when I started building this business down here in 2012 is when I started. So we just hit our 10th anniversary.
So was Listing Edge more Jacksonville?
It's only Jacksonville.
And then the previous company you had, you called it
Farmer Photography.
Farmer Photography. That was more Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I did a little bit of that down here, but I started the Listing Edge in 2012. So we hit our 10th anniversary a few months ago.
Awesome.
And then what I was doing is, so I would do that stuff in the morning. I would go to the gym, I would come home, and then I would go do some shoots, and then I would come back and underwrite into the night and, process files and stuff. And it, got to where we were doing, a fair amount. And then the contract that we had ran out, and they said, well, hey, we got another contract coming up in a couple of weeks. If you'd like, you can be on that. And I decided at the time, I'm going to do this full time. So that was probably 2014, maybe.
Okay. So you reached an actual tipping point of where you could, you probably took a small step backwards because the underwriting is paying well too, but to realize that you could focus more time and you obviously sound like you probably enjoyed that.
Well,
photography side.
Yeah, it's definitely better than, underwriting is like you can make good money, but it is very repetitive. It's, you're sitting in front of the computer, you're looking at the same stuff over and over and over again. Very easy to make mistakes. And, it's kind of stressful because you make a mistake in underwriting and it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yeah. We want to argue with the underwriters a lot, but the reality is it's their name. They have to stamp on it.
Yeah. And they can get in trouble.
Yeah.
So my wife, she worked for Chase here in Jacksonville for almost 10 years, I think. And the last position she had there, she was in the fraud department. And basically what happened was we're the restitution department. So when Chase or anybody else like that, they go, hey, we suspect mortgage fraud, and they go through it, and then they wind up getting prosecuted. There's some restitution they're owed. That group, their job was to go get restitution. And she's like, don't ever do fraud because you will get caught. Because they were still prosecuting stuff from 2007, 2008. Like they'll get around to it.
Yeah.
Just a matter of time.
Like the IRS.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Just when you're like, oh, I'm good, that's when they find you.
Yeah. Also, that letter shows up. There is no doubt on that point. Since I do mortgages, that as much as people, and not everyone, there are characters out there that will literally. When I was at Quicken Loans, I remember getting the phone call. And they're like, hey, they're talking about this particular client and then showing me how the same person applied using the same social security number, but a different name. And then, we've seen, stuff where they've doctored the pay stubs. And in the electronic world that we're in right now, there's so many places to double check that.
Yeah.
And the fact that, if you're on a W-2, it's being reported to the IRS. They know exactly where your monies are going to.
Yeah.
And they will catch you. And everyone wants to close quickly, but you have to realize this stuff is going on the backside. The loan officer, realtor, we don't even know this is going on.
Exactly.
But as soon as that loan is in process, all these back end checks, what properties you've owned, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not on the credit report.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's all recorded somewhere.
Yeah, it's recorded somewhere, and they will.
So let that be a lesson to you.
Yep.
Do not commit fraud.
Well, I've had people say, no, I hadn't had foreclosure in the last 7 years. And basically what it is, the lawyer got it off the credit report. But the reality is it's still a foreclosure and it's out there.
It's going to show up when you do a title search.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they find it. Yeah. All right. So we come to Jacksonville. We're doing the mortgaging. Now you go full time out there. Did you already pretty much kind of have built up a few clients at this time that made you allowed to tip over and go full time?
Yeah. We had some regular clients at that time, and some of them are still with us. Thank you very much. You know who you are. And we just started growing at that point. I wound up hiring my first employee not long after that. Unfortunately, that one didn't work out so well, but it helped me get out and do more. And kind of the whole thing about the way I've always wanted to do this business is it's all about professionalism, because I just find, and I'm not pointing the finger at anybody in particular, but like just in this real estate world, you have the people who are very professional and then you have the people who aren't. And just what I see is that the more professional people, they're the ones that are doing the business. And at the end of the day, like I know I want to deal with people who are more professional. And I don't mean, when I say that, I don't mean the people that are goofy, because I'm a goofball. But at the end of the day, when it comes time to do business, I'm a professional.
Right.
And most people are like that, but there are some people that just aren't. They don't take it seriously. Like
I think there's two characters in there. There's some that don't want to be professional, and then there's others that just haven't reached that real
Exactly.
producer's level yet, and they'll get there hopefully if they're doing the things in their business ethically and doing the right things and so forth,
Yep.
providing value. And now, as we know in the circle of business, there are agents out there who obviously are shopping for your service, my service, whatever, and they're looking for the bottom line, and then complain about the service.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're always going to have that. I always put it this way: is like you've got your Walmart shoppers and you've got your Neiman Marcus shoppers, or whatever, whatever the high end stores, and everything in between. So none of those shoppers are wrong. It's just we're not Walmart. So if you're a Walmart shopper, we might not be a good fit for you. We're also not Neiman Marcus. So if you're that shopper, we might not be a good fit for you. But, we're somewhere in the middle.
Well, because Jacksonville's not a Neiman Marcus.
There's that as well. Exactly.
Yeah. There are some Walmart areas,
Yep.
but I think for the most part, a good portion of Jacksonville and St. Johns County, I think it's probably most of where you're tracking.
Yeah.
Maybe a little north, a little south of that. But for the most part, we're kind of that middle of the road. Between the Neiman Marcus and Walmart, but demand a certain quality. So if you are a Neiman Marcus, you're not going to get a lot of business because they don't see the value in that.
Exactly.
But they don't see the value in at least the top agents that we're talking about as far as a Walmart.
And that's why we want to be in the middle, because you got that, and then on the lower end. And again, it's not a knock on this group, because that's the way they're doing business, and obviously it's working for them. Like they're gonna look for the cheapest person that has the good enough quality.
Right.
And again, I understand that, because like there are certain things when I buy, I go for the cheapest with good quality.
With value, if you see enough value in the dollar,
exactly
what you're spending,
I get it. But the thing is, like, some people get all mad, like, oh, they're just cheap. I'm like, well, no, it's just that's their budget, and for whatever reason, you don't know their situation. So I never let that bother me.
No, I totally agree with you. And one of the top movers in the area, they're more expensive. Well, yeah, that's true, but they do background check and drug check their employees,
exactly,
and that sort of thing, and that has cost. And these other guys are hiring up temp workers on the corner on Saturday morning when they need enough employees.
And that's the way we are. I mean, I invest an awful lot of money in the business, between equipment, the portal that we got, the editing that we do, all that kind of stuff. And then the people that work for us, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, I pay really well, because I'd like to be able to pay better. We would all like to do that. Right. And I try to pay what I hope is fair. And, I take input from the people that work for me, and when I can, I try to do what I can, because I got my bills to pay too, but they have their bills to pay.
It's just, we're all basically, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, what comes around goes around, because there's that, you want that person to stay in business, so they're there every time you call and you create a relationship. We're in a relationship business. Realtors like relationships. I'm sure they know when they call you what they're going to get, and they like to make that phone call. But if you're not charging the right amount, you're not going to be there the next time.
Exactly.
They call.
And that's the funny thing is, like, as far as other people that do what I do, everybody in this world kind of gets mad. It's like, oh, you're not charging enough. It's a race to the bottom, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, they're going to find that out one way or another, or it's going to be enough for them, because you don't know their situation. Like, if I was doing this and my wife made $20 million a year, and I was just doing this as a hobby, would I care what I charge? Maybe, maybe not. I don't need the money so much. So right. Like, what I tell people is, like, they're not in business to help me. They're in business to help them. And more importantly, like, I don't pay attention to what my competitors are doing as far as that, because all it's going to do is get me upset, and they're not going to change anyway. So why get upset?
Right.
Like, I know who I need to worry about out there. I understand what they do, but I don't lose sleep over what they do, because it doesn't matter.
Well, it's very tough. Because you're providing, my business is very, not only regulated, but obviously it's hugely competitive. You, on the other end, are providing a service. Yes, some of these agents, I'm sure, are taking the pictures with their cell phone and putting them out there.
Some do,
You
yeah.
can actually do that, and some of you might actually get away, and someone doesn't know the difference.
Hmm.
The value comes in to those who do know the difference, right?
Yeah.
And then the agent who wants to be able to proudly say, and I think in a great way to say that, hey, I want to list your home. I'm going to hire a top notch photographer to come in, or in stager or whatever, and these are quality people that are going to come in because the quality is my quality. That I demand and so forth. So it's a tough thing. And then what do you charge for that, right?
Hmm.
What's the value? Any one person's value on any given day. I mean, that's a tough part of your business, I would
No,
imagine.
you're
Trying to stay
exactly right.
competitive without overpricing. It's still,
And it's always a moving target.
yep.
So things change, new products and services come out, different services become popular, other ones kind of fall by the wayside, and that's kind of, when I go back to the professionalism thing, then that's kind of part of what I mean by that, is that thankfully that we're big enough and have enough revenue that we can kind of stay on top of that. Whereas, when I first started out and I was just a one person shop, I couldn't afford to keep up with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand it's tough to compete. And thankfully we're in a position that we can continue. Like we're expanding. We're going to be hiring some people coming up because I anticipate things really getting busier and busier as they
I
have
think
been
the
over
turn
time.
of the year is going to be.
I
That's my. I
Yep.
think when I was at the event the other day at the Jacksonville producers are putting on with Landmark Title, and Howard mentioned it with Roundtable Realty. People got a little sticker shock. Prices went up, rates went up, so everyone was like, "Whoa, hold on a
Yep.
second. Let's slow down for a minute." Yet sales are still going on because those who realize, I kind of need to get in now. I can refinance later when the rates drop, but if I don't get in now, I'm just that much further
It's just going to cost
behind. I
more.
mean, how many of us have the hindsight on real estate and say, "Man, I wish I bought that place, back in 2010 when I could have got it for 100,000. Now it's worth, eight, 900,000." Or someone posted one of the agents, Tara Hubbard, who's been on the show. She posted this posting from 2015. It was a house out at the beach. Um, it was a two-family unit, I think it was, or something. It was selling for like 400,000. They would sell for over $1 million
Oh yeah.
today. Yeah,
Yeah.
in
And
7 years.
I think it's more like, who wouldn't say that?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
coulda, shoulda, woulda,
Everyone, exactly. Everyone has that. But you led in actually a little bit there. Made me think when you're just talking technology,
Hmm.
and so you come here to Jacksonville. You're starting to tinker at 2014. You go full time with as listing edge. It's still just you,
Hmm.
but I mean the technology. Like, I mean drones. You really didn't have the access to the drones, or unless you want to spend a lot of
Well, they
money,
were
I
way
would
more
imagine.
expensive, and
Yeah,
we've been doing them since they started getting popular.
right.
So I've invested an awful lot of money in drones over the years, and all of them except one, I've more than made my money back.
Yeah,
And the one that I didn't was the most expensive one,
yeah, yeah.
and that was just a mistake on my
Now,
part.
when you go do that, because I know they have, because these aren't just the average $100 drone that
No,
you're throwing up there, and then the amount of times you're using. Obviously, when anyone invests in a capital investment, whether it's a truck or a
right.
drone in this case, to evaluate your return. But you, that's another thing. I mean, did you go to a training? I know, having bought a decent drone for my son and I, they talk about, oh, should get approved if you're going up so many, hundreds of feet and all this other jazz. Do you actually have to carry some sort of
Yeah,
certification or anything?
yeah. In order to
Because you get paid to use the
Yeah,
drone, you have to have some sort of
well,
credentials, right?
it's any return that you receive. It doesn't have to be money. So,
Mm.
I have a friend down in Tampa, the Tampa area, who got, you know, kind of caught up with the FHA a few year or FAA a couple years ago, where he had done a shoot for his personal self and he put it on his YouTube channel. It's not monetized or anything.
Mm.
And they were like, well, you need to, it's called the Part 107. You got to be Part 107 certified. And he's like, but I'm not gaining anything from it. He wound up, getting it cleared out, but like
Right.
they're real strict with that. So we've had
You think someone reported him? Do you think they
Oh,
actually would found?
well,
They
he
found
got
it
on
on
the
their own?
news. So yeah,
Oh,
I've had
okay.
people report me and then they call me and they're like, no, you're good because
Yeah.
again, professionalism, everything's above board. We're certified, licensed, or insured, all that kind of stuff because it's very important. Like what people don't realize in this business is everybody thinks like, oh, I'll just put the drone up and nobody will know. And most of the time, you're right. The problem is when something happens, you crash the drone, you damage some property, whatever, and then authorities get involved. And the FAA has repeatedly said, if somebody is flying on a job that they're receiving something, some kind of compensation, whether it's money or otherwise,
Mm.
and they're not Part 107 certified, and we find out we're going to prosecute you, and it's a maximum of a $10,000 fine for every instance, and that's you, the operator, the people that hired you, and in this case, brokers, owners of the home, they're going after everybody.
It's
And
almost like suing everybody that's
yes,
involved.
and they have. Now, I don't know how successful they've been, but the point is, do you want to get mixed up with that? So
Right.
what I tell people is that if
Right.
you're going to use drone services, whether you use us or not is up to you, but we're certified and everything. Use a certified pilot because if you don't, you can really run into some problems. And then as far as training, there's not really, it's not like the FAA really has training. Like they have some stuff so you can pass the test and stuff like that, but it's not really training. Everything that I did, I've kind of learned on my own. You know, you know, there's a lot of people that like drones and I got involved in that community and learned a lot from those people and then just practice. You know, there's stuff that, you know, I can remember the first time I flew over water, I was like,
Yeah, exactly.
and now I'm like, I do it all the
That's
time.
why I bought a waterproof drone for my son and I, deliberately for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's Florida. You're always over water. Or, you know,
exactly.
I've 2 times gotten it caught in a tree. Stupid, both my fault. And 2 times I had to pay the same guy to come out and climb the tree and get it because that's what he does for a living. And he's so nice, he never wants to take any money. I'm like, no, dude, you just saved me like $4,000. Like, I gotta give you something.
Yeah, exactly. So that technology has come along, but just thinking of basically the last decade, really, I mean, the advancements. So obviously, we're talking about value. You know, that costs money to get certified for that. Staying on top of the technology, which I think there was something on your LinkedIn, you know, about doing, I guess, the virtual tours and so forth. You know, there's special cameras for some of that type of stuff, or giving you the 3D images and all this stuff, and staying on top of it and using it properly. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Not only the money for the equipment.
Yeah. If you went into my car right now, or Tony Crafts is my lead photographer, his car, you would see like a camera shop worth of gear. You know, we carry, 4 or 5 different cameras and, sometimes use them on every shoot. And it's expensive. I mean, it gets expensive. I mean, yeah, you can use less expensive cameras and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem with the less expensive cameras, they don't last. So when you start doing the volumes that we do, it's like anything, stuff breaks.
Yeah.
So we invest in the more professional level stuff, which is made to take more of a beating, so to say. So,
well, I mean, is the quality there as well? I mean, is it a little bit better? I mean,
well, yeah, you're definitely getting quality. You know, the crazy thing about digital photography is that honestly, yeah, your cell phone can give you a good enough photo. And I say can. It's not real easy because you're going to have to do some editing. Now they're getting better and better. Don't get me wrong, but you need to do some editing. And honestly, with photography, that's where the magic is. Like, I can teach anybody to take a picture. The question is, what do you do with that picture afterwards? As far as how do you make it look like you want it to look like? And when people say, "Oh, we saw this listing, and I noticed they were you got it was the listing edge photos because you have that look." That's where that look comes from. It's how you edit the photo, and everybody's going to do it differently, and not necessarily on purpose. It's just like we all like different things. So each photographer typically will have kind of their own look and feel. I mean, if you really look at it, like sometimes, like if you're just like whatever, it's a picture. You're not going to notice.
Well, that's an artist. I mean, that's what it comes. Every artist has their own little.
I'd love to say I'm an artist, but
well, the way you are, you're an electronic artist.
It's funny because people say that. I'm like, I am not. I don't feel like an art. Like it's just like I take pictures of properties, and to me, it's commercial. Yes, there is some of that, but it's like it's not. We're not an artist like a portrait photographer is, or like they're really sculpting light and doing things like that. And can I do some of that? Yeah. Do I enjoy it? Not really. So I'm not as good at it.
Right.
You know, those people are more of an artist than we are.
You mentioned earlier, I can't remember if it was pre-show or when we first started, about, hey, your first shot, your first shoots,
Mhm.
right? Compared to what, you look at today. As, we talk about social media and the agents, or like myself, to get out and shoot video, you'll get better at it.
Yes.
What are some of the things, just describe, like, someone was looking at your original photos versus looking at them right now. What are some like obvious things that you just do differently?
They're not going to look as clean in like, so, most of us are blending images together. Sometimes you do, HDR. Sometimes it's just exposure blending, which is a form of HDR, for a lack of a better term. I'm not getting too technical anymore.
Yeah.
So you would notice differences in that because, what I was doing back then was very basic.
Mhm.
It At the time it was good enough. Now as things have evolved, so I'm always looking to provide a better product
Right.
and try to make it fit within our price points, right? Because the problem is, like, I can give you incredible quality, but you're going to pay more for it.
Yeah.
And,
What's good enough, right?
yeah,
What
well,
is
that's the
that?
thing is, like, with real estate photography is like most of the stuff is only good for 90, maybe 180 days, right? Then it goes away because the house is sold.
Right.
And yes, some people might keep it around, but at the end of the day, it's not stuff that lasts. It's not
A
a
portrait
permanent.
of your kid's school.
It's not, yeah, exactly. That's different. So, we're, people, customers are willing to accept a little bit less. What I have noticed, and I actually like it, is that the customers are expecting more now. And I like that because, we try to be on point all the time. I'm not
Mhm.
saying that we don't ever point out something that we need to fix because, editors sometimes won't do things a certain way or whatever, but we talked about that a little bit before. But at the end of the day, my goal is to provide better than good enough quality.
So when you say that customers are expecting more, are you talking about the agent or the actual homeowner?
Both.
Both are expecting more. More from the standpoint of just like impactful. What's more?
More quality. So, years ago, we never had complaints from agents that said, "Hey, the customers look at this and the color." When I say the color's off, I don't mean like, "Oh, this is blue, but it's supposed to, but it came out white." I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's like it's just something that's slightly off.
A slightly different shade of blue.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
something that honestly, if you were a customer and you looked at the photos online and you went to look at the house, you would never notice. But if you own the house, you're going to notice it because, again, we
You
know
see it every
everything
day.
about our homes, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
So we're seeing more of the. And again, I don't mind that. I like that. And it's funny because some photographers complain when you get agents that are more particular. I'm the opposite. I like those agents because that tells me they care, which means they're going to care enough to look at our quality and appreciate what we're doing and not just go like, I'm not going to use him anymore because he didn't do this.
So how do going back, 'cause in sales, you said you've now been involved. You have to sell your business, and then obviously you're involved in creating the product that you're putting out. How do you express that as someone who does real estate photography? These new agents coming on, or even to go into someone who may be one of those people who is a little frugal,
Mhm.
and they've been using this guy who uses his cell phone to actually say, hey, if you spent a little bit of money,
Mhm.
you're going to get that return back. How do you tell them that?
Yeah, well, so basically the way I look at it and the way I explain it is that if
Or
I'm,
express that to them. How
yeah,
do you tell them that?
yeah, if I'm a real estate agent and I'm taking listings,
Mhm.
because not everybody is a listing agent. Um, the listing is my product. So when, let's say I'm one of the customers and I'm selling my house and it's $100,000, so it's a cheap house. And a lot of agents, and this isn't a knock on any agents because I understand budgeting and how they got to pay for everything.
Mhm.
But like, if you then also have a listing that's $500,000, right? Typically, you're going to do a little bit more on it. The problem is that if you don't at least do a minimum amount for everything as your listings, the first thing you tell, well, one of the first things you're probably telling them if you're an agent is like, hey, we're going to do all this stuff for you. And then as soon as it's done, we're going to put it up on the MLS, and we're going to put it on my website, on my Facebook, on my Instagram, all this kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they get the stuff back from the from the photographer, they're going to say, hey, we've got that all up. And the first thing they're going to do is go look at it. So if they go to your website and you've got your $100,000, $500,000, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and they see the $500,000, they're like, man, those are amazing photos. And they look at theirs and they go, wait a minute, they're not so amazing. And it's not because the property is not amazing. They're going to ask you as the agent. Now, obviously, there's ways you can address that, but it's not a fun conversation. I mean, I haven't been in sales most of my professional career. It's never fun when they go like, well, why am I not getting what they got? You know, because obviously the short story is, well, you're not paying me as much, right? Because they're not making as much commission. That's not what the customer wants to hear. So you can't say that.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of talk around. So I go, if you do a minimum amount, then everybody knows they're going to at least get that. And then, you know, then they kind of have that conversation is like, well, I want to show you what we do, you know, for our customers. And you're going to see some stuff on these bigger houses. And, you know, the bigger houses, they require more to sell because of their expense. So you're not saying like, I don't want to spend money on it. You're just explaining like, it takes more to sell it because in a traditional market, it does.
You got to track someone to step up to that price.
Exactly. And so then this way, as the agent, you have that baseline of quality that you can go, that you're going to get at least this good, you know? And I know some of the agents that use us, that's kind of the tack they take, and it seems to work pretty well. So, I mean, obviously it depends on the situation, but.
Well, now as a business owner, I imagine your regular customers, they have a different, because whether they're doing that $200,000 home or they're doing the $700,000 or $800,000 home, they understand that, that you've expressed to them that ideology. And I assume as any business owner wants, someone gives you a lot of volume, you're giving them a volume price. So because your goal is obviously to be called by them every month, the top producers, and to the point where you really can't take on any new customers because they've got you all booked out.
That's where I'd love to get.
That's where the ideal thing. So those agents have created a relationship with you.
Correct.
You've created a relationship with them, and they know when they call Rick, it's done.
Yeah, and many of them I've actually gotten to be really close friends with. You know, I travel with some of them, and I'm going away in another week and a half with a good friend of mine, Jimmy Diamond, who's an agent. And, you know, I've done some stuff with other agents in the area. And, you know, cause like I want to like the people that we deal with. I mean, who doesn't, right? Who doesn't want to deal with people they like? So part of what I love about sales is I get to meet so many people. Cause, you know, those of you that know me know that it's hard to get me to stop talking. Certainly my wife would tell you that. Very happy to tell you that. Yeah. And, you know, it's just that kind of job. And, you know, like I've gotten to where I'm personally not shooting as much because I'm trying to build a business, do things like this, but I enjoy shooting because I meet really interesting people. Like over the years, I mean, I've personally shot over 10,000 homes in Jacksonville. So like I've met a lot I in the 10 plus years of doing this here. And
I've seen a lot of parts of town.
I've seen a lot of parts of town. I drink a lot of water, and I say I've peed in a lot of toilets in Jacksonville. And, you know, but you know, it's interesting to me. And I meet some people that like, I would never meet in the daily life because they're just not, we'd never cross paths, and some fascinating stories that I've heard from people. I love that, you know?
All right. So trip over on stories. I had a question here. Because you were doing a lot of the more, I guess we're going to call traditional photography that someone says, oh, a photographer, the first thing they think about is doing weddings and other events like that, or you know, portraits. That's the word. Yeah. So you said that kind of, what do you like about, I imagine you like doing real estate than what you used to do in doing the wedding. Give us a horror story of a wedding that, you know, what is the photographers are under so much stress from the standpoint of, I imagine the bridezillas and the mother-in-laws on top of you.
There's that. And the interesting thing is that people that have never shot a wedding don't realize that honestly, the person that you have to keep happy is the father of the bride, because most of the time, he's either paying for or paying for a portion of the way, most of the time.
Right.
And so, yeah, we got to keep the bride happy, but if dad's not happy, then nobody's happy.
Right.
So that was a thing that we had to learn early on And, you know, I've seen some bridezilla, and, you know, it's one of those things like I kind of laugh at about, but, you know, having gone through marriage myself, like it's a stressful time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they have a lot of other things that are way more important than me that they're worried about. And so as a photographer, the tough part and the part of the reason I didn't want to do that anymore is that I've really got to kind of wrangle everybody.
Mhm.
And, you know, part of the problem with being a male is like part of the whole wedding experience for the bride is getting ready with all their friends and they're putting makeup on and
Right.
getting, well, I can't be in there during that.
Right.
So, you know, I find that there are some phenomenal male wedding photographers out there. So I'm not saying that there aren't, but
It's
like
a little tougher.
it's harder for us. And a lot of the really good female photographers out there, that, you know, they can take advantage, which is great.
They
I
have the
think it's
back
awesome.
door. They have the back door access.
Yeah,
you go
so-
in, they're not going to say nothing when they walk in the dressing
Yeah,
room.
so that's
Right.
tough. You know, that's honestly the logistics are usually the problem. And you know, like, you know, people go like, well, you're at a party, you know, and like, I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm not at the like I'm
You're
watching
there.
the party. And then, you know, the worst part is that they always will feed you, but you never have time to eat because some of the coolest pictures are when people are eating. Well, when they give you your food, they're eating too. So like, you know, you never really had time to eat. And look, people
Yeah.
love doing weddings and look, my hat's off to you, but it's just not something that I enjoyed doing.
Right. Right. Yeah, I just can imagine. And then the scheduling,
Yeah.
you know, that whole stress, because they're only doing it hopefully once. And the coordination of everything, and I can only imagine it's a high level of stress where going out and shooting someone's home, if you showed up 15 minutes late, not really a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly another reason that I didn't like doing weddings is like, if you screw something up on a wedding, they're probably not holding the wedding again. And actually there's insurance that you can take out as a photographer that you can pay to have it redone, but who's going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
So, with a house, you're exactly right. Like if we make a mistake on a house, it's not usually the end of the world. I'm not saying I'm happy about it, but everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
You know, like, okay, we'll go. Like, I remember, you know, because we shoot for a lot of the builders, and I was doing a shoot for Dreamfinders up in South Carolina, and you know, so the way I shoot homes and I teach my people to shoot homes is it's a process. You do it the same way every time. This way, you're less likely to forget things. So I went up and we went up on going on a weekend, and my wife and kids went with me, and my wife's asking me all kinds of questions, which is what she does. It's not a complaint. If you're watching, I'm not complaining. It's just what happened. And I got distracted answering her questions, and I forgot to do a room. And I had to drive back up to do that. Now, obviously, I can't charge the customer, but I had to drive whatever it was, 2.5 hours, 3 hours each way to go just redo that room because I made the mistake.
Right.
You know? But it's not like they were like, you're fired because you made the mistake. You know, whereas not that you get fired with a wedding, but like they're going to give you some bad reviews, and how many more weddings are you going to get?
Right. Right.
So I don't like that stress. Honestly, I also prefer not to work on weekends and holidays. I know all the realtors are like, yeah, what's up with that? You know, but that's kind of like my family time, you know, because I bust my butt the rest of the time. I mean, we will. I mean, we charge a little premium for it, but we will. But like, I just try to keep that.
Well, I imagine most agents try to have their listings up by Friday, so it goes into the weekend.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll get something later in the week, and the homeowner, for whatever reason, wants it up right away. So, I mean, we do work on weekends, you know, from time to time.
Right.
It's just that, you know, I'm like, hey, we can do it, but it's going to be this much more. And then more often than not, they're like, well, can you do Friday or can you do Monday? And I'm like, yes.
How do you handle it? Because a lot of times, you know, someone says, yeah, I'm really, I want to sell my home. And so the agent's like, they want to get it up there quickly, right? They want to get it in 2 or 3 days or whatever. They want it on the MLS with all the pictures and all that going on. How do you handle that short notice? Because you aren't being called, hey, I guess occasionally you might say, hey, so-and-so's listing their house September 1st. So what time next week would be convenient for you? It doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's pretty rare, but it does happen. But what normally happens is, you know, they'll usually within a few days. And for us, normally 2 to 3 days notice is enough. Yeah. So my goal has always been that I I don't want to have to say no, that I can't do a certain time. Obviously that's going to happen. So, you know, we're going to be hiring another photographer here soon. Probably training. My wife is kind of coming into the business a little bit more. and she's going to learn to do stuff. So we got some overflow stuff, and obviously I'm going to always be able to do stuff, but I want to be able to be at the point where it's 5 minutes to 12. If you called me, in 10 minutes and said, hey, can you do a shoot this afternoon? I want to be able to say yes. Some days I can, but not every day, because you think about it as a customer, you might understand it, but like you would prefer to get it done when you'd initially, especially with agents who you've probably already asked the customer, the seller, when is a good time, because they've got their schedule. So I'm dealing with 3 different schedules basically.
Yeah.
So it does get, honestly, scheduling is probably the biggest challenge of this business right now. It's just, it's time consuming. It's going back and forth. And, the thing is, like,
Are you able to actually, know how long it's going to take typically to shoot a home?
Yeah, we got that all figured out.
What's some variables that play into how long?
It's on what services that you got and how much people like me talk more there. So I always go to a house and I'm like, well, I'll be out of here in no time as long as I don't talk too much.
Right.
And I'm like, because I like to talk. And then, sometimes I get some customers and they love to talk too. And, if I have time, I'm there for a half an hour. And I look at it this way, is like, we represent the agent when we're there. And very often we're there when the agent isn't there, because they don't have to be there. And you want to, as an agent, you want to be comfortable that we're representing you in a nice, friendly, professional manner. So that's one thing that's a stickler for anybody that we hire, is you got to be personable. Because I go, I'm a perfect stranger. I'm a big bald guy walking through your home that you don't know who I am, and I'm going through every part of your home. Like, I understand why that might not be comfortable.
Right.
So I like to talk, and I'll even be talking from the other room so that I'm not like going through your drawers or something disgusting like that, right? And no, I'm not saying I've ever heard of any reports.
Anxiety that people think they're stealing stuff in his house.
Yeah,
okay.
but we, on the flip side, we see a lot of weird stuff that I'm kind of like, you might have want to put that. Well, you might have want to put it that way, knowing I was coming.
Well, that's kind of the next question I had was, I see some pictures on there. My wife generally is the one who picks them up, not from you, but that agents put out. And you're like, they're taking a picture of the kitchen and they're going, do you think they saw what was on the counter?
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. There's actually whole Facebook groups devoted to those kinds of pictures. and look, I'm not going to say I've never missed stuff. Like, it happens. But yeah, you kind of got to look at the room at least and go, oh, well, I need to clean up the desk a little bit or whatever.
Or when you're looking in the lens, what is within the frame that might be picked up that might just not look right.
And sometimes it's hard to catch stuff for different reasons. And sometimes we'll have to go in and edit some stuff, and sometimes we got to go back and reshoot it. And again, that's our mistake. So, I've heard of some photographers, like, there was a post in one of the groups the other day that I hang out in for photographers, and they're like, I drove out to this place and I forgot to shoot this room, and now they want me to go out. What should I do? And I'm like, well, you should go out and shoot it. Like, people are like, oh, you should charge them. Like, charge them for what? It's your fault. Like,
yeah, you screwed up.
Like, it's just like, I look at people and I'm like, how are you doing business? This doesn't make sense. Like,
why they have to ask that question?
I always go, how would I feel if I was told that? Like, that's a good way to figure out whether what you're doing is right or wrong. How would I be cool with that? And if the answer is no, then your customers definitely aren't going to be.
Right. 100%. So technology, let's talk a little bit, because I want to highlight, the 5 minutes or so we got left here. The services you offer. Is there services that are out there that don't make sense in this area? That would be, is there some sort of technology like, man, that's way out there. Those people selling the $3 million homes, they can do that. My bread and butter is, here in the $1 million home, because that's what most of the homes are. And I don't bother to do it. But the different services that you offer, and is there a service that you don't offer because it just doesn't make sense here in Florida?
Well, I mean, not like that. I mean, we chose which high-end 3D tour that we offer, which is not the most popular one out there. We use what's called the iGuide, not the Matterport. And there's a lot of reasons, from the amount of time it takes to do it, the quality, the cost, all this kind of stuff. And, we also get accurate floor plans, which you can get floor plans with Matterport, but I don't, they're not as, so there's all this stuff. Right. So we chose that. But no, there's not really anything now. But back in the day, there were some things when, certain things were more expensive that, people just weren't taking advantage of here. Like video in the beginning, not a lot of people took advantage of.
Right.
Now people are taking advantage of it. So pretty much everything now. Like, I always say, like, if you can think of something, a service to market house, we probably offer it, or we're thinking about offering it.
I know the industry has a thing like, having worked with a builder for a while, the talk was, the average person walks into a builder's model, has already seen it half a dozen times online.
Right.
What is the industry for the average, home that's out there? The importance of diving into these services, and what is the response that's being seen on the other end as these people on all sorts of platforms, whether they're seeing this listing on the MLS, they're seeing this listing on a regular website, they're seeing it on Facebook, Instagram, whatever.
Well, it's interesting because I don't hear people, saying those things anymore. It used to be like that, where they wouldn't do certain things because of whatever, but now, because prices have come down on everything, and it's just easier to do these things now, and it's more accessible. So the pricing that we as photographers have to charge has come down. So now a lot more things are palatable.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, more people get photos. I don't know what the numbers are, but it used to be, I want to say, let's say 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I think it was something like 80% of homes had professional photos. And then as they got more expensive, that percentage went down, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And now, pretty much everybody is putting good photos. Most of them seem to be hiring professionals nowadays. Not everybody, but again, there's some situations where doesn't make sense, obviously. But more and more people are doing it. I think it's become more acceptable because now everybody kind of knows. I'm looking on my phone, I'm looking on my computer, everything's online. Whereas, a few years ago it was like, well, 90% of the people start online. Well, now pretty much 100% start online. So everybody understands that need photos,
Right.
like when we were talking earlier about, we're going to start doing lunch and learns. I'm like, well, people don't want to hear me talk because you need photos. So we're going to bring people like you, and then
Right.
we're talking about our social
But
media
you
services.
put on a show because yours is
Yes.
a visual show.
Exactly.
You want to show them the difference between.
But I don't need to convince you that you need professional photos. You may or may not hire us, but you already know you need it.
Right.
So, like, I want to get you information that you want and the things we want to do.
Did you notice, because I've had some discussions with the agents that I've had on the show last year, or of course right now even, I mean, you have a decent listing here in St. Johns County, you put it up, you're going to have offers on it. Do you really need to spend that money on, some drone footage and so forth? Can I cut a corner? How, and I know you would agree with this statement, but I'd like to hear from your angle, because I've expressed my angle. Whether the customers are laydowns and you're selling that house within minutes, or it's taking you months, it's still your stamp as a real estate agent, because that listing with the internet now is still there.
It's going to be there forever, whether people use it. Yeah. And I think it's two questions. Do you need to do it to sell the house, or do you need to do it for your business? Do you need to do it to sell the house? No. Like, as hot as the market's been, it's still hot here.
Right.
Do you need to spend all that money? No, because the house is going to sell. But from your business standpoint, do you need to? Well, probably, because again, like, the way I explain it is, like, when you hire us to do a listing for you, you're marketing that listing, but you're marketing yourself and marketing what you're going to do in the future.
The quality of your presentation.
Right. So you go to the next listing, you go, these are the things we do. We bring in a professional photographer, and we do drone shots, and we do video, and we do 3D, or whatever it is you're going to do.
Right.
Whereas if you pick and choose which ones you do, I get it again. And that kind of goes back to something that I talk about a lot with salespeople, is like, as a salesperson, you can't look at each individual deal and how much did I make, how much didn't I make. You got to look at the total picture. So, like, we have jobs that we make no money. We have jobs we lose money on, but then we have jobs that we make more money on. And as long as you even out your profit margin, that's what matters. And too many salespeople get caught up on, how much am I making on this sale?
On this one.
Right. Because that's tangible. That's more tangible.
Right.
So I track things for us monthly, quarterly, annually. I don't care what an individual shoot is, how much we're making. I care how much we're making at the end of the month.
Right.
Because that's the number that matters. And there's stuff, whether I'm doing a favor or we made a mistake and we got to go back out. So, it's going to change the profitability for each deal. So to kind of keep track of that is hard to do anyway with the number of shoots we do, but it's discouraging when you're not making a profit on a deal and you're like, "Argh,"
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, the important, and I want to express to the agents that are listening, the new agents that are out there, who you team up with, uh, whether it's, obviously a top home inspector, you get your lender on your team. You got to have the photographer and the stager on the team as well, and that stamps your quality. You got to as you surround yourself with 5 successful people in the industry to hopefully move you up. You also need to surround yourself with the 5 best that work with you, click with you,
Right.
like working with, that is providing the service that, because as my goal and your goal, I'm sure is the number one thing is to make that agent look
Exactly. I'm
great.
there to make the agents look good at what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully we can do that.
What would you say in the with Listing Edge, in specifically, obviously working with real estate, what's the biggest mistake you've made?
Biggest mistake I've made. Well, overall with photography is probably not concentrating on this sooner rather than later,
Mhm.
but it's probably more of buying equipment that I probably shouldn't have, because I am a geek and I like stuff.
Some
And
fancy gadget comes
yeah,
out. You're like, I
sometimes the
gotta have
shiny
that.
stuff kind of gets my attention. So that,
It gets us all.
yeah, but yeah, as far as from a business standpoint, that, but also, I mean, I've had a couple hires that, honestly, I don't want to say that I regret. I regret the way I handled it, because, we did lose some business because of that. And it was because of me, because I tried to make things work a little, I was too nice. And, that's probably the biggest thing, because, that's a bigger setback than me spending a couple extra dollars on a camera or something.
Right.
And, that's something that I've been working on as a business owner, and that I have to improve on, is not necessarily getting better at hiring people. It's getting better at dealing with the people that we hire. When
It's actually, we talk about lunch and learns and trainings,
Mhm.
and whether, I was on the phone before you got here talking to our loan assistant, right? And when the same way a real estate agent grows, a loan officer grows by getting that assistant. That assistant takes on
Right.
a load that relieves the loan officer or the real estate agent to go out and do those things. You as a small business owner, so important. Even even looking at a publicly traded company like Loan Depot and the money we have, or even some of these agents, doing, making a exuberant amount of money, they're as a team, and they're generating a bad hire, or like I said, as you handle it, can really set you back.
Oh yeah.
And that might be a great training there, like hiring in the real estate industry and putting some top people together to say, hey, don't do this. You got to do this. I think today, just from my experiences in the last year, and who I'm working and following and so forth, it's more important today because the personality tests and sales and so forth are so much better than they were 20 years
Yeah.
ago. And what is this person really good at? Where do they like to work? And, where can they 10X it?
Yeah.
And it's so important that I think that might even somehow put some sort of training put together, hiring in the real
Yeah.
estate, because the real estate agent is a small business owner too. And they're going
Yep.
through the same pains when they're hiring
That's what
transaction
a lot of realtors don't understand, is you're a business owner, basically. You're an independent contractor.
Yeah. And making that wrong hire without taking a few hours of, just a little bit of time,
Yep.
to doing some due diligence to make sure you hire the right person, so you're not set back, or hopefully it doesn't cost you business, but it can. All right, I'm going to finish up here. We're both, Loan Depot. I hooked up, and obviously I'm a huge supporters of Jack's Real Producers. So I want to call out Kristen and Brian and what they do, and just have you comment on what you get out of the Jack's Real Producers.
Yeah, it's funny because originally, I forget the people that had it before Kristen and them, and they had approached me, and at the time I was kind of like, I don't get it, I don't understand, and then they took over. They've had it for over a year now, I think.
About a year and a half or so, yeah.
And I just started noticing, I'm like, wow, they're kind of doing some cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to them, probably, I don't know, 6 months ago, whatever, how long we've been in them. And I was like, hey, I think I'd like to get involved. And we've gotten involved. And, we try to make the events. We can't always, I missed the event the other morning. But yeah, I think that, they're really doing a great thing with real producers. I'm actually seeing a value from it.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't convinced I was going to. So I'm very glad I did. And, the events they do are really a great way to kind of get everybody together. And it's not a sales pitch, which is nice. It's just, hey, we just get to know each other,
Right.
which is part of
And
doing
they see
business.
you enough time at each event, and
Yeah.
then they might not approach you the first time. Maybe it takes 2 or 3 times
Exactly.
before they approach you. Because how does it in your industry? I imagine how does a typical agent typically hire their photographer?
Most of it is referrals, word of
Yeah.
mouth. Yeah. And it's still like that with us today. Yeah, we go out and we do, presentations and, lunch meetings and dinner or breakfast meetings, things like that. And we get business that way. But more often than not, and especially, I was telling you, we're selling social media services through another company. We're reselling their services. And I've found that that's worked out really well. And it's just things that we haven't done that's really kind of taken us to the next level. That plus the real producer stuff, we're really starting to see stuff. And now I'm getting people, they log into my portal, they create an account and they order, and I don't even know who they are. They never talk to me, which
they're logging in and saying, hey, I need a session by Thursday at this address.
Right. Which on one hand is awesome. But on the other hand, I like to know where they came from so I can thank the people that referred them. But
or where you're spending money at.
But yeah, and I also kind of like it because I like to, I'll say establish the ground rules, so to say. And what I mean by that is like, I want to set their expectations. Like, if you think that we're going to take photos of a listing at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're going to have the photos back that afternoon, that's not how we operate.
Right.
You'll have them back when you wake up in the morning, but you're not going to have them back that afternoon. So just so that everybody understands, because if you haven't spoken with us, you may not know that.
All right, I'm gonna put you on camera. I'm gonna put your name right there. Here's your opportunity to express anything maybe we didn't talk about, or an agent who may be watching, or maybe you clip this out later. Especially why it's important to call Listing Edge, to call you, and you're an agent trying to move forward, or you're a top agent right now, you're not satisfied with the services you're getting. Why should they call Rick in Listing Edge?
Well, besides me being such a fun, good-looking person.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you want the real answer. Well, I mean, again, going back to what I've said before, I feel like we are as professional as any other real estate photography company, and more professional than most. Not a knock on the other companies. Just, again, we've got more resources to kind of get that way. And that's just the way I operate. I want us to be professional.
Your drive is to be the best.
We're absolutely trying to be the best, the biggest and the best. I can talk about our quality. It's great. You can get good quality a lot of places, but I think that the total package between the portal, which, allows you to go in and select a day and a time and do that without having to call me, or you can call us and schedule it. The delivery, everything comes through the portal, resize it for the MLS. So all that kind of stuff that you have to deal with as an agent is kind of taken care of for you. We generate property specific web pages that come with the portal, so you can share those around. We do a bunch of extra editing, like blue skies and green up the grass and images on TVs and fires and stuff like that we don't charge extra for. So while you may find people that are less expensive than us, chances are they're not offering the same product. So when you compare apples and apples, you're not really, you're comparing apples and oranges at that point.
And have the quality and control and desire that you're putting on every one of your.
Yep. And I'm very accessible. I mean, it's funny, being from New Jersey, coming down here, people are much nicer, I guess is a good way to put it. And I guess some people get a little bit like, they're always like, well, I don't want to bother you with a problem. I'm like, well, no, I'm the guy you want to bother with a problem.
Yeah.
So, I try to be as accessible as I can for that. And, I'm not going to be like, oh, you make excuses. I'm going to be like, well, let's fix the problem.
Right.
So, that's kind of is my goal is to try to make you look as good as possible in front of your customers.
So I want to finish up with this portal. So because my wife is working on a listing, she's working on it's 9, 10 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning. They can actually go onto your portal and schedule you without having to wait till 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock till, in the morning till it's a respectable time to call. They can go ahead and knock that out in the middle of the night and move on to the things they need to get on to. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons we implemented that in the delivery, because, delivering files is cumbersome. And with the portal, it's not. You just log in, go to, we call the shoots projects, go to that project, view the photos and download the photos.
You have your login to the portal so they knows it's you and pull it out. That's awesome. I'm going to finish up with our 2-minute warning questions. What is your most favorite thing to do here in Northeast Florida, you and your wife? What do you guys like doing?
Besides travel, which is not here in Northeast Florida. We love the local music scene. We love live music. We love going out and listen to it. I mean, I'm shocked at how good a music scene it is here in Jacksonville. A lot of really good local bands.
Now, do you migrate, like, say, from Fernandina down to St. Augustine, or you just like hang out to the beaches there?
Mostly in the beaches area. There's a couple places, in Mandarin that we'll go to, but like we live closer to the beaches, so that's usually we'll just Uber out, so I don't have to worry about driving, kind of thing.
My standard question: is it more important who you know or what you know, and why?
Who you know, because if I don't know something, I probably know somebody who does.
Right.
And that's exactly how I've been telling my kids.
Well, I mean, is there someone in your business that's just tag on it? We all have these industry leaders that we may listen to or read their articles or whatever, some of these cutting edge. I imagine there's people that obviously are at a high level or focused on photography and real estate. To be able to reach out to them or read their material, they're going to tell you what to do. The latest thing coming out, hey, this might be this, it's coming out in 2023. You start looking at it because you want to stay cutting edge.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that out there, but you got to be really careful in the photography world because there's a lot of people. They talk a good game, and in reality, that's not what they're doing.
Right, they're selling it.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, there's some people that have businesses that do what I do on a much larger level in other cities, and that they've really kind of helped me out. There's a gentleman, Tyler, out in Colorado that I actually just saw him when I was out there last week with my kids, and he's been very, very helpful. We kind of bounce things off each other whenever I'm out there. I see him. And then a guy down in the Orlando area, Vic, he's got a big company down there that does a bunch of business that we kind of help each other out.
Did you meet these guys at like an industry event?
I met him I met Tyler online when originally we used to offer interactive floor plans through a different company, and he was a partner in that company. And I got to know him there, and then we've kind of just evolved.
Stayed in touch.
And then the other guy I just met online.
Interesting.
On Facebook.
Interesting. Well, Rick, I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you. I hope some of the agents got out there and got to know you a little better too.
Yeah, hopefully.
And the inner workings of your business.
And I'm happy to buy coffee or lunch if anybody wants to talk about more of this.
Or come by the agent's office.
Absolutely.
If they've got a team or something, and explain the services to everybody.
Happy. I love doing presentations. I love an audience.
And he'll buy lunch.
And I'll buy lunch or breakfast or whatever.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Rick.
No worries. Thank you.